The Absolute Universe was designed to prevent heroes from ever rising up. Governments, corporations, media, even emergency services are controlled by the same ruling elite. At the center of the web stands Jack Grimm, the Joker, the man fueling the chaos that keeps the system alive. To tighten his grip on his hometown of Gotham City, Grimm orchestrated riots and mass violence that pushed Gotham into martial law. And he did this all in order to build Ark M. Officially, it was a secure facility, potentially a prison, although no one seems to be quite certain. But beneath the surface it hides a vast underground complex where people are not treated or rehabilitated, they are transformed. Bruce Wayne discovered the truth the hard way. In this universe he didn't grow up in luxury. He grew up on the streets alongside the children who, in another world, would become his greatest enemies. Harvey Dent, Waylon Jones, Eddie Nygma, Oswald Cobblepot, and Selina Kyle. Here, they are the closest friends, but that made them targets. Ark M seized Waylon first, experimenting on him and turning him into a hideous, relentlessly hungry alligator man. When Bruce tried to save him, he was captured by Bane, Ark M's brutal enforcer, and subjected to months of torture. With Waylon's help, Bruce eventually escaped, but that just escalated the situation. His other friends were brutalized and twisted into monstrous reflections of the people that they once were. Harvey had his mind split in two and his body burned in half. Every bone was crushed in Oswald's body, and the top of Eddie's skull popped off, exposing his brain. Yet even after all that, Bruce refused to give up on them, even when they didn't want to see him anymore. That determination defined Batman in the early chapters of this story. He was fighting to save the people he loved, and for a moment it seemed like he might not be alone. Similarly, Bruce recently found an unlikely ally in Wonder Woman. They shared information about the forces manipulating the world, and together they even uncovered a potential cure for Waylon's mutation. It was a fragile spark of hope, but Joker noticed, and in response he escalated his plans. Familiar names like Hugo Strange, Jervis Tetch, and Jonathan Crane were all involved in shaping the horrors within Ark M's walls. By the end of that story, Joker began strategically releasing these horrors back into Gotham, starting with Dr. Pamela Isley, Poison Ivy. Unlike the version most readers know, this Ivy is not a plant-themed villain. She willingly pursued a more radical theory, merging all forms of life together: plant, animal, fungus, bacteria, the 6 biological kingdoms. Her sponsors saw profit in her research, but they tried to limit its scope. It's better to sell individual treatments for illnesses rather than cure all diseases. When she plotted to move on and continue her research out of their purview, they locked her inside her own laboratory, exposed her to the treatment, and burnt the building down. They meant to destroy her, but instead they perfected her. Pamela survived as something entirely new, a fusion of all life itself. When Batman confronted her, he still tried to reach the human being she once was. Even after everything that had taken place inside of Ark M, Bruce still believed that people inside these monsters might be saved. However, Ivy's transformation had gone too far. She spread mutagenic spores through one of Gotham's central buildings, turning the victims who inhaled them into mindless drones. Batman was forced to fight his way through the infestation to stop her, but she was far stronger than he thought possible. He had thought he was talking to Pamela Isley, but really he was interacting with one of her many plant-based clones. The real Isley ensnared him with ease. And that's where this issue picks up, with Batman facing off against Poison Ivy. Now, before getting to Batman's battle, we should continue talking about Poison Ivy's motivations. Based on what we saw in the last issue, it was presumably Jack Grimm that burnt Isley to death in her lab and took her research, but I found myself wondering why she was cooperating with him. Well, turns out she isn't. She was inspired by Batman to rise up and fight against Grimm. She notes that she remembered seeing him running around in the nip in Ark M when he was trying to escape. It's just she took the wrong lesson from Batman's campaign. She decided that the only way to defeat a devil-horned beast like Grimm was to group together and rise up. So far so good. But by turning everyone else into monsters. Oh dear. Apparently it takes a monster to defeat a monster, and you know what, she may not be wrong there. While Batman refused to join her because he'd lose his humanity, it seems like part of him takes what she has to say on board. You see, in his personal life, things had been falling apart. His friends don't want to see him anymore. His mother seems to be moving on and getting into a relationship with Jim Gordon, and Batman has become a commodity. You'll recall in the last issue how he overturned the tables of the street vendor selling knockoff Batman merch, and we're shown that Jim Gordon witnessed this. He takes Bruce aside and lets him know that he knows what he's doing. As many people have pointed out, his size makes him very distinct, even in a spiky leather costume and a cape. But Jim isn't here to try to convince him to stop. He's not even all that concerned about him being Batman. Instead, he's there to offer some advice. A tree grows its tallest when you care for its roots. He trusts Bruce because he knows he's a good person at heart. But the problem is, in the Absolute Universe, good doesn't quite mean what we expect it to mean. As Joker said in the Absolute Evil special, all that is good and right and just leans towards malice. Batman can feel his heart hardening. He's had to resort to some terribly violent acts to achieve his goals. Lopping off hands, stabbing eyes, burning crotches with acid, turning Bane into mulch. He's done some terrible things that the mainline Batman would never do. When you consider the fact that, from his perspective, his roots, i.e. his friends and his mother, the people who have been grounding him, have abandoned him, he decides to take Ivy's advice about evolving to heart. So when he faces Poison Ivy and she asks him to join her, he says no. Barbara Gordon returns armed with one of the sonic weapons her team had in the last issue, and this seems to be the only thing that can hurt Ivy. You may find yourself wondering how the GCPD got this weaponry, but remember they are in Joker's pocket. With the revelation that she's not following his orders and seems to be trying to take control herself, it's understandable why he would equip Gotham's finest with the means to defeat her. He notes that the only human part of Ivy is her heart, the last remaining part of her true self. We're shown in a flashback how her heart was the only thing to survive the fire and her new form grew out of it. So Batman offers an ultimatum. If she doesn't destroy the spores and stand down, Batman will use the sonic weapon on her heart, causing it to burst. Now this won't kill her, she'll be able to regrow it easily enough, but that's the last piece of her human self, the thing that connected her to her now deceased mother, and it will be gone for good. So Ivy submits, and Batman destroys her heart anyway. There will be people that are outraged to see Batman being so callous. Ivy could have been an ally to him, they could have worked together, but he has given in to his negative impulses. But remember, this is only part of the story. I'm reminded of the early 2000s Batman comics around the time of the Bruce Wayne murderer storyline, where Bruce Wayne was framed for the murder of Vesper Fairchild, and Batman decided to give up his civilian identity and just be Batman full time. I recall some readers being outraged in places like the Newsarama forums. How could they get the character of Batman so wrong? Batman would never give up, they cried. But that was the point. The writers were breaking down the character of Batman to build him back up and put him in a more hopeful place. And I think that's what Scott Snyder is working towards. You can see that he tried to meet with his friends despite their refusal to see him. Dent was placed on leave because of his association with Batman. Cobblepot's men fight with him and Nigma refuses to solve a riddle, the answer to which is an apology, by the way. But later in the issue we see that both Nigma and Cobblepot notice when Bruce doesn't come back, and it seems to cause them to pause and think. More importantly, Wayland seems to have reverted to his human form, or at least close enough to it, and he calls to Bruce in the depths of the sewers, wondering where he is. Likewise, his mother has reunited with her former colleagues in the Court of Owls. Here they're a band of rebels rather than the Illuminati-style aristocrats that control everything. She leaves Bruce a message on his answering machine telling him how much she cares about him before she gets taken away by the Owls. And yes, it's implied that Martha has been killed by them. Apparently she used to be a Talon, one of their top agents, and she wasn't supposed to come back. But by the time Batman gets around to checking his phone, he deletes the message without listening to it. While Batman destroyed the last of Ivy's humanity, or at least the part she valued, he has suffered a loss too. The hope that this broken world and the people he loves within it could still be saved. Absolute Batman 18 is available now from all good comic shops.
I would encourage you to research your local comic shop, and if you don't have one, I'm certain there are dozens of good stores nearby that would be happy to mail you your comics. If you're opposed to the idea of cluttering up your home with comic books, then you can get this one digitally from places like Amazon as well as Neon Ishiban. Personally, I prefer physical comics, but I do like the convenience of having thousands of comic books accessible from my phone. But you do what works best for you.
For those interested in my physical collection, I swung by Gosh Comics again to root through the remainder of their Batman event items and found 2 Batman the Animated Series soundbooks. Yeah, they're not comic books, I know, but we all know how much I love Batman the Animated Series. The Minotaur book worked fine, but the Fabergé egg doesn't work as well, but it seems to capture my cat's attention well enough. Next time. I'll be back shortly with a video about Absolute Green Lantern 12, where a ringless Joe comes face to face with the Obsidian Beast. And after that, I want to talk about Bleeding Hearts #2 from Dennis Camp, the writer of Absolute Martian Manhunter, where a zombie named Poke discovers that his heart has started beating again. As a consequence, he wonders if being a flesh-eating, shambling corpse is really the best use of his time. Hope to see you then.